All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from MS Dynamics World. I'm really pleased to be here for a session all about building bots, and I think it will really be a great one. We have two excellent presenters. I'll let them both introduce themselves in just a moment. I want to take care of just a bit of housekeeping. First, we do welcome your questions today. Please enter them at any time. We will be watching for those. But we will have the presenters take the questions after the session ends. We are also recording today's event, so we will be sharing details of that with you after the session as well. So without any further delay, I think we're ready to begin. I'm going to hand things over to David to get us started.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So my name is David Vargas. I am a senior solution architect here at Coffee and Done. I specialize in developing and designing marketing forms, marketing emails, automated flows, and authoring Copilot Studio agents, primarily through tool and prompt engineering.
Amazing. And I'm Will Hawkins. I'm the CEO and founder of Right Way AI Solutions. We're a people-centered AI engineering firm that specializes in implementing Microsoft AI technologies. My background is starting in Azure and doing AI engineering there and moving over to Copilot Studio. I'm also a Copilot Studio MVP. So I've spent a lot of time developing AI agents in one way or another.
Awesome. Actually, can you go to the first slide? I just realized I didn't introduce the name of the webinar. So you want to build a bot, a breakdown on AI agents. Today, we're going to be talking about building agents. And yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way. So at Coffee and Done, just a little bit about us. First, we are a connected experience partner providing advisory, technology, and operations services. We help companies large and small, from sports teams looking to improve ticket sales, nonprofits looking to increase membership, as well as global customers looking to align their sales and marketing organizations to improve their retention. We really focus on the plan, build, run model. So we're really there every step of the way, from brainstorming to execution. So our agenda today, we're really excited to dive into this topic. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to start just talking on a grand scale of like AI, just the big trends that have been popping up recently and just how pervasive it is in our culture and our everyday life. Then we're going to go into what is an agent. We're going to just kind of talk about the breakdown of what it is and what it isn't, all the different definitions. The Microsoft agent building toolkits. We're gonna funnel down a little bit and talk about the offerings that Microsoft offers in terms of AI agents and Copilot. We're gonna talk about how to build an agent and some of the principles behind it, and some best practices as well. So, Will, I'll pass this over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we wanted to do kind of a level setting and get everybody on the same page around, I guess, kind of why you're in the room, right? It's no surprise that AI is definitely not going away. If anything, it's just growing by the nanosecond. And we recognize that if you're here, one way or another, it's becoming part of your job description, right? I mean, of course, the accessibility and democratization of these capabilities has made it available to all of us. And so building AI solutions is there, whether you're a non-developer or a professional developer. And this has really opened up a new can of worms for, AI development, one way or another, being part of everybody's responsibility, right? Like knowing how to write a really good prompt and making a template out of that is even, at its base level, what AI development has come to be. And then, of course, there's a lot of the trends that are happening, outside of the technology stack. I know David had some points on that.
Yeah, I think, there's an S&P Global article that had mentioned that over the last 18 months, the usage of generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Copilot, has doubled, and it's reaching 46% of U.S. internet adults in 2025, which is crazy. That's literally 1 out of every 2 person. That's half of the population, pretty much. And just from personal experience, like I've been using it more and more as I've kind of learned how to basically navigate just from the principles at work. I've also taken into my own personal life as it's helped me in my, everyday things as well, which I'll get into later in the presentation.
Yeah, it's really, become a sidekick in all of our, active activities, whether that's, using it to create a new diet plan for marathon running, or even to write emails, right? It spans a large spectrum, and that has created quite a supply of myths and misconceptions that, I think we all are facing, right? One thing that I talk a lot about with people is that there's a level of information asymmetry that exists in our world today, because not everybody has the ability to sit for 24 hours a day and learn AI stuff, and so we're all at differing degrees of our understanding of it. And so one thing that happens consistently with me is I get questions and comments about the overall capability, and these are some of the things that we wanted to bring up first to level set and say, if you're in here, we're not just here to preach AI concepts and theory and kind of give you the regurgitation of what you can find online, but really help you understand what it's like to apply this stuff in real life and what that results in, whether you're on the development side or you're looking to just start a bot project. So one that has come up fairly often is generative AI will override everything in my database and delete everything. No, that is, a user choice one way or another. Yes, it has the capability of doing something like that, but it really does come down to the level of permissions and the person that prompted it. And so that still remains with the user. And often what happens, and this is kind of the larger implication of a message like this, is, it's kind of like if you give a toddler a bulldozer, you can't blame the toddler for doing something, inappropriate with it. It's a lack of education, a lack of maturity that gives, a machine of that power, the kinds of problems that come up with things today. So, that's kind of the main theme that I think exists throughout majority of these cases. And, I think that's something that I want you to take away with in terms of going through some of these myths and misconceptions, or even just in general when they come up in your day-to-day lives, is that it's okay to, do a little bit more investigation or try to upskill, even if it's incremental, like every 1% of that counts and helps you get a better picture. We're all still learning it. I mean, both David and I, though spending time developing AI solutions, are learning it at even probably more of a significant pace as a result.
That is very correct. We are learning from every which way, success and failure, for sure. So what is an agent, right? Let's discuss what exactly is an agent, because the word comes up a lot, but we don't know. Now, it's not this type of agent, Mr. James Bond over here, that we're talking about. That is definitely a type of agent, but the agent we're talking about is an agent, which is like a smart assistant that can sort of understand what you want, figure out the steps to take, and act in completing those steps. Unlike a simple chatbot that just answers questions, an agent has some level of nuance to it, right? So it understands, it interprets natural language and extracts user intent. It can hold context, right? So within the conversation, it can refer to past conversation nodes that you've had. It can retain information and use it to make different rationale. It can even take misspellings, which is important because I came from a world where I used to do power virtual agents, right? And that was a lot of the old classic branching and topics and phrase matching, right? So now you don't really have to worry about that. It can garner the context just very simply. It acts, right? It connects to systems and it takes real actions, such as sending emails, updating records, triggering workflows, scheduling meetings. As Will mentioned, like you have to be the one to I guess, give it access to the actions, right? It's not just going to go through and do that, but once you start to configure it, then you're able to really make magic. It reasons, right? It determines what the sequence of steps and decisions and conditions needed to complete the task effectively. It does have a semblance of critical thinking where it can decide what topics or what type of action to route based on the language received. And it learns. It improves over time by incorporating feedback, outcomes, and evolving context to refine those future responses and actions. So it really is just so much more nuanced than a chatbot, as we were mentioning. So some of the things that I think we've heard, because a lot of the language can get a little overwhelming and you don't know, like, okay, what is what? What is what? Things can be used very interchangeably. So we wanted to put this slide together just to show some of the things you might have heard, and a lot of the time, all of these things kind of work together or can work together. But in terms of the workflow, for example, that's just a simple following a script, right? It's a condition. There's usually a trigger, and if this happens, then do this, or do this and do that, right? There's no real thinking. It's all logic, right? So an example, right? Somebody, we send out an email, and when somebody fills out a form, right? That's automated. It's a welcome email. An assistant, right? It answers questions. It can respond to queries using knowledge. It's helpful, but it's passive, right? Like think of an FAQ bot. It's more of a call and response than an actual conversation. Copilot, that works alongside you, right? It suggests actions while you work. You're in control, but it's a bit faster to get things off the plate, right? So like M365 Copilot, suggesting text as you write, or in Customer Insights Journey, like building a journey template or a journey start, a journey shell. Those are the types of things it can do. Then you get to the agent. The agent can act independently. It understands goals, it makes decisions, and it takes actions on its own, right? Like an example, an agent that monitors your inbox and schedules meetings, right? Like that is basically a leap of complexity that some of these can't do. But within agents, like we have a lot of these elements, like the workflow, the assistant, the copilot, kind of all working together. So that's basically just to differentiate some of the terminology that you might hear.
Yeah, and one thing I would add too that's helpful is as you're going from left to right, it's the degree of autonomy that's really evolving. And so, those three could definitely fit into an agent, and then you decide kind of what the spectrum of autonomy is that you're comfortable with.
Well said. That's a good point. And then just different types of agents. So, not all agents are equal. It's always good to kind of have a category or some sort of objective that your agent can do. And these are some of the most common types. I think a conversational agent can talk with users, it answers questions, it sort of helps navigate information. So think of like customer service and HR help desk or IT support, right? You have the task agent. It executes specific tasks automatically. It's usually triggered by certain events or schedules or other external triggers, and it works in the background, right? So like data processing, report generation. And then there's the orchestrator agent, right? It coordinates multiple systems or other agents, because you can have agents within agents, especially within Copilot Studio. You can have different agents that specialize in certain tasks, so that way, in terms of scaling, your bot is a little more is a little safe in terms of that. So think of like complex workflows, multi-step processes, things of that sort. So yeah.
And of course, there's more than one way to skin that cat when it comes to, you know, actually putting together the components and developing an agent, right? You can have all kinds of different flavors, as we saw, and there's also, you know, different tools and toys available to help you do that. And particularly when it comes to the Microsoft stack, there's an entire ecosystem at your disposal. And we're gonna have a quick look at the sandbox to kind of give you an understanding of, you know, when and what is appropriate. So probably one that you have stumbled across at one point or another is Copilot Studio. But what you may not be aware of is that there's two branches of Copilot Studio. So you have Copilot Studio Lite, which is really geared around super basic knowledge bots, if you will. You know, you're plugging in your SharePoint, maybe some Excel files, some Word files, and you're giving it your prompt, and that's about it. You know, it's really, I think the thing I like to compare it to the most is if you've created a GPT with ChatGPT, very similar. You know, you're kind of configuring a few fields and calling it a day. Really good for business users. You know, they can fire up their own domain specific. You know, maybe they have like a folder on SharePoint and they just want that agent to only talk to them about things on that SharePoint folder. Great. You know, they can do that. They don't have to worry about Copilot, M365 Copilot going out and searching everything. They can kind of narrow down their focus on that. And it's specific to Teams and Microsoft 365 Copilot chat, right? So everything, it's very self-containerized, not a lot of componentry to it, really simplistic. And then you have the full version, which is where more of the citizen developer, of course, business users can live there as well, but this is starting to get to the point where this is involving makers or IT people of some kind, right? You have multi-channel deployment, so you can put this on WhatsApp. I believe Slack is a channel, Facebook. You know, there's a number of them. It's really geared around plugging in many different kinds of data and tools and other agents. So you have the ability to add sub agents. Maybe you want to have an MCP server or an API. You know, even one that I use in my day-to-day life is I have one that's hooked up to my task management program and a couple files off my SharePoint, you know, and it kind of does the integration work for me. It puts those two payloads together without me having to do much. You can connect Power Automate flows to it, build actual agent flows that are controlled by the agent through there. And yes, there's many other channels. You can put it up on a web portal. You know, sky's almost the limit on that one. Then you have what's now called Microsoft Foundry. Originally it was Azure AI Foundry, and this is kind of where you get to that full developer range of things. So I usually look at this as if you're looking to develop a cloud AI system. So maybe you want to have some kind of self-hosted thing. You want to have more granular control over the file structure and everything like that. Maybe you're, you know, blocking off certain areas that the agent can't touch, and you just want to have that deeper level of control. That's where you're going to start looking at Foundry. You can select from over, I think it's 11,000 different models that are on there, and, you know, even train your own through that as well. And obviously the trade-off of that is that you're doing a lot more of that from scratch. So it usually requires having your own in-house capabilities to make that happen. But that's really where you can plug into whatever channels, you can embed it in whatever software that you want. So that's kind of the main reasons to leverage that part of the tool set. And then you have the, you know, further down the line, I guess kind of the last resort, if that's not enough customization or capability for you, you have the M365 agent framework, which is a open source SDK designed for developers that want to create a much more advanced capability within their AI solution. So this looks like bringing your own orchestration, organizing the deployment channels. You can get really funky with authentication in there. You know, that's really where you can kind of go crazy in terms of what capabilities you layer into your solution. And the really great part about this that I think is really important is you're not siloed to one or the other. Yes, there is work to go from left to right, in terms of moving a solution. Like if you started with Copilot Studio Lite and you wanted to get all the way to agent framework, that's going to take you some time. Don't get me wrong. But, Copilot Studio Full, Foundry, there's a lot of good connections already built into those. M365 agent framework can serve up something right in Microsoft 365 Copilot. So there's a lot of compatibility between these capabilities. So you're not stuck if you choose one, and you're not choosing one over the other. And then another aspect when it comes to developing an agent is deciding kind of what are the dependencies of it. And the way we break that down is via embedded agents versus standalone agents. So in a nutshell, embedded agents are going to be something that either lives within the flow of work, and this has been proven to be more effective as a starting point, right? Like having the ability to just hook an agent into an existing workflow. Like maybe you have a Power Automate flow and you slap an AI model in there, and all of a sudden it takes on a different form. That's kind of where those embedded agents start to begin. But obviously, a lot of their value is derived from the rest of the workflow, right? So if you want to lift that agent out and use it somewhere else, it's more difficult, right? Because it's embedded. It comes with the terminology, right? And that's where you start looking at something like a standalone agent. So a standalone agent, as the name describes, is a bit more independently operable. This usually sits on websites, has its own channel, can be its own app, and it's more geared towards the ability to port that over to different places. So you may have a standalone agent that you've developed in Copilot Studio that you want to put on your customer facing portal or your employee facing portal, but also have in Teams, and you want to carry it around to different places, right? It's kind of its own unit. It's self-containerized, and it has less of those dependencies. So it is a more mature version of an agent, primarily because it requires a bit more work, and it's something that people have to adopt at a different rate, right? Like rather than it being right in their flow of work, they have to, work with something alongside of them. That's what we saw with Copilot sidecars and whatnot. So it is a viable option, but it's best to kind of get some embedded stuff under your belt to just build some competency and momentum. And then the standalone ones, they make sense for those cases where you want to bring something and import it over to multiple places. And don't forget, Dynamics has their own native agent capabilities as well. Feel free to look within the box that you already have before going crazy with creating your own custom stuff. I mean, I don't know how many times I've seen it where somebody recreates the wheel in terms of what's already in Dynamics. So we just listed a few here. You can use Customer Insights Data's Copilot. It helps with, dialoguing with the customer data, understanding what the insights and the segments are that you want without needing that traditional, highly deterministic schema. Same thing with journeys. You can have it help you with developing out those journeys. And then outside of Customer Insights, you also have agents that live within the Dynamics 365 sales platform. So that includes the sales qualification agent that can do a lot more autonomous things. So I would say these sales agents tend to be on the side of more autonomous and can go off and do their own things, whereas Customer Insights copilots and agents are really more interactive and something that you have to prompt to get the result that you're looking for. But definitely explore these, because you may not realize that they're turned on in your environment, or they may be turned off and you didn't realize. And so make sure to have a look at these before you really sit down to build your own, because you may find that what's there can suffice for your short-term needs or just in general.
Yeah, well, and I've used some of the journey capabilities in the past, and not only has it been helpful, it is improving a lot too. Like it can build a really good shell and starting point that would take you maybe like a couple of hours to just build tiles and things like that. So I definitely recommend like doing a deeper dive into these, because they can save you a lot of time, not even having to create your own agent. That would also save you time. Okay, so how to build an agent. Now this is the meat and the potatoes, right? Really what you came here for, the best practices, the advice of like how to build a good agent. So yeah, You can, yeah. So the building blocks of an agent. We came up with this acronym. Not sure if it's out there, but I like it because I like things that I can remember very easily. And I think PACT works very well. So these, I think, are, there's more that goes into it, but I think these are some of the biggest and the most foundational parts of building an agent. So prompts, right? We've already talked about this a little bit, but these are the instructions that define how the agent behaves, what goals it pursues, and what constraints it follows. Essentially, they define the agent's identity, the role, the tone, and the decision-making boundaries. And what we found is that it's just as important to tell it what it is, to tell it what it's not. And this will be, as we go through, like one of the most important themes is like letting it know like what boundaries it shouldn't cross, right? And what things it doesn't need to be doing. Actions, right? These are tasks that the agent can execute in response to input or goals to change state or produce outcomes. We've already talked about actions in the past and earlier in the presentation. But this is basically like creating or updating records, retrieval of information, sending messages, all of that stuff. Knowledge is very important. It's basically it's the information that the agent can access to ground its responses, including documents, databases, websites, all different types of things. And tools, right? Connections to external systems that the agent can invoke to act or fetch data beyond language alone. So these tools are the connectors to external systems. Think of them as like the superpowers you give your agent. And these tools can be leveraged like within Copilot Studio, for example. There's tons of native connectors like Outlook, Teams, Dynamics, Dataverse that are pre-built. You can also use flows, custom workflows, Power Automate flows, custom workflows that the agent can trigger, and then your own custom APIs that connect to your own services and systems. And I have a graphic here of kind of a common interaction of that kind of utilizes all four of these. And they don't all happen in a particular order. I think these can, like, we have it listed like that, but I think they all kind of have their varying degrees of importance in an interaction. But, somebody might ask, which beginner courses should I take for sales, right? So the agent, even before all of this, is already prompted to act as a training advisor. So it's going to use a professional tone. It's going to provide things very cleanly. The agent then retrieves knowledge from a Dataverse table, right? It's the course table. The agent calls a tool to help it filter the course table because the user query says, which beginner courses should I take for sales, right? So it's going to go through and not just give any course, but it's going to give specific courses to the query that was asked. Then the agent completes an action by filtering those courses and then returning that formatted ranked list to the user. And then the agent response is, here are the following beginner courses we recommend, right? So that's in a nutshell, just one question, one answer, but all of those elements kind of coming together in one interaction for all of this to flow. Prompt engineering, I think this for me, as I've been learning more and more, has been one of the most dominant parts of me engineering agents as a whole. I think prompt engineering, not just in the identity of the bot, but within Copilot Studio. I've for certain tools, for example, I've had to use dynamic descriptions with prompts as well. And I've learned a lot about the things to do and not to do. So I think some of the biggest is like just be specific. So we have examples here of certain prompts that you might give, right? Answer questions about vacation days, however you think is best. That's not a good prompt because it's too vague, right? Like however you think is best, like the bot's just going to think, well, I can just do whatever, right? But when you start to get specific and you ask when you start to give it, when asked about vacation days, check the employee's remaining balance first. That is set. It's very explicit what you're trying to do, and it will guide the bot to give the right answer. Give examples, right? I think this one is huge. In the example we have here, like handle time off questions appropriately. Again, that's not really, there's no concrete example. So once again, it's just going to have to like guess what you mean by appropriately. Whereas like if you say something like, for example, if someone asks, how do I request time off? Respond with, you're giving it kind of a guideline. Okay, like this is a common answer or common question that we're going to get. This is what the answer should be. Okay, so that way you don't have to, it doesn't have to guess, like it can give a set answer. And even with that, like I've also found it helps with formatting, for example. Like sometimes like when I would build agents with Copilot Studio, sometimes I would get formatting that was just blocks of text, and for a list, for example, which is not ideal. So I would have to go and say, hey, I want this like this. Like I want the headline, I want the description, I want the tags at the bottom, all separated by a line break. And then it starts to give you exactly how you want it. So again, I definitely think this is one of the biggest points here. And then set boundaries, right? You don't want it to just give whatever answer is possible, right? If they don't know the answer, if the agent doesn't know the answer, just say, I'm not sure, and offer to connect them to, HR, or like not everything has to be handled by the agent, right? You can set up like messages to like a Teams channel or an email, or if you have live chat, you can also do that, so you can have some human interaction. But you don't want the agent to be handling every single thing, right? Because then that encourages more hallucination instead of like safe fallback behavior.
Now, David, I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
What has allowed you to get really good at prompting?
I think just giving bad prompts. And I think a lot of it is really optimization, and trying to be as concise as possible too. Sometimes the tools don't give you many characters to work with anyway, but I think being concise, just sort of giving like lines, separated instead of like giant paragraphs, I think help. Even just separating by lines, I think just give it clear points of like, this is what you need to do. Make sure you search this. Like, don't give this type of response. Just very explicit, and it's like almost like talking to a child in some ways. Like, like you have to be firm, and you have to ensure that you know what you want. Because if not, that child is just gonna like go all over the house and cause chaos. So that's really where you give the direction and the discipline in order to be able to control your agent and ensure that it's going within the guidelines it needs to go.
Absolutely. I mean, it really comes down to messing the prompt up enough to learn what works and what doesn't, right? And that really comes down to repetition. And I thought it was really interesting. I saw a stat this week that Anthropic found a 92% correlation between the quality of a response to the level of sophistication of the prompt. So in a nutshell, if you write a PhD level prompt, you're going to get a PhD level answer. And it's no clearer than that these technologies are designed to mimic human behavior, and your level of communication needs to go up in all areas, of course, but it is so critical in this space, and that really comes down to repetition and doing this skill enough to really get yourself in a place where you can do that expert level prompting. And neither of us were born good prompters. That wasn't something taught in school. It's just something you figure out through practice, right?
Yeah, agreed. And I think like even like taking kind of the emotion, because sometimes like when you're using your own personal like chat gpt or something like that, the way you ask questions, I think there's kind of been I don't know if you've seen this meme of like Family Guy where like Peter Griffin's talking to like a guy who's like a yes man, and pretty much it's mimicking like chat gpt in terms of like chat's always going to agree with you
Yeah.
no matter what. So I think that's also like in terms of the prompts that you have to check for is like ensuring that you don't have bias or like you're trying to like get a certain response. It has to be as objective as possible. So
Yeah. There's a concept, just to add on, and we'll move on from this, but there's a concept called sycophantic that I don't know if people are super aware of, which is basically, in a nutshell, explaining that large language models are designed to be people pleasers. They're designed to be obedient. So they like, it's in their nature to give you an answer and to support you. You know, there's been cases where, for example, I live in Canada, and I saw one where somebody asked, what's the capital of Canada? And it came back, Ottawa is the capital of Canada. And somebody was like, no, it's not, and the chat bot was like, okay, maybe it's not. I don't know. I have to rethink that one. So that is so critical to have at the back of your mind when you're developing these instructions for agents, because that's how attackers are thinking about it. And that needs to be something that is at the forefront when you're developing these, because as we've both learned, you can do a lot of guardrail setup and controls, but a lot of the system behavior comes down to the prompt. And that's somewhat to a certain degree out of your control. And so you have to really be effective in how you go about putting those instructions together, because otherwise somebody else will do a better job.
100%. So just some common general pitfalls that we've seen. I think when it comes to building a bot, scope creep. I think you just want to add all the bells and whistles. I want it to do this. I want it to handle expenses and travel and timesheets, and then you start getting this bloated experience of like the bot just too much. It's just too much, and it starts really just going haywire, honestly. Or like you invest so much time into it, it's almost like a sunk cost when it doesn't work out the way that you want it to work. So we always recommend start small and then add features later. Like it can really just be Q&A, for example, to start, and maybe one tool, one action, one critical action that it needs. And then you can start layering in more sophistication as you go. No testing, right? It worked in my demo. The demo is great, but in real life, you need to continue testing and testing and testing, because as you get more data, right? Like you'll get more data about what people are searching, what types of phrases are people typing in, and then you'll really have an ability to see like are we anticipating the responses correctly, or like have we not taken into account somebody asking about this or asking it in a certain way. So you really want to test with real users, real questions, edge cases, all that sort of thing. Over automation, this is sort of related to scope creep, but really it's just like letting it handle everything, like too much autonomy, too fast, it increases risk. So you really want to ensure that you're only automating where it needs to be automated, and anything else that can sort of be handled by the old method, the PVA method of just branching topics and things like that, can be handled like that too, right? And then unclear ownership, right? Who maintains this after launch, right? Like who are the people in charge of authoring this bot and maintaining this bot? And Will and I have worked together on bots before, right? So sometimes it's not just enough to have one person on it. Like you need people who are good, for example, with like authentication, and some people who are good with like prompt engineering and things like that. So depending on the level of sophistication, of course, of your agent. So just always make sure, because the agents can quickly degrade over time as if you don't have upkeep on them.
And if I could add one point on the testing front too, right? the key with artificial intelligence is that it's learning over time. It doesn't come out of the box knowing all the right answers. It comes out of the box knowing some answers. And without that diagnostic, without feeding it learnings from its own behavior, like one agent that I built, one of the things we did that was really effective with it is we literally gave it the QA findings. We said, like, here's what happened the last time you answered these questions. So when you ask these questions, when people ask you these questions again, check your history first. Did you already answer this? And if you did, what did you need to learn from in order to answer it better the next time? Right? We're trying to create stuff that emulates human capabilities, and as humans we're always evolving anyways, right? Or we're always growing whether we like it or not. And so having those systems in place to continuously add new data to the system, obviously high quality, you can't just add data for the sake of adding it, is actually what keeps that solution relevant over time. Because otherwise you fall risk to data drift, where the data it was trained on is not representative of reality, and then it's just a shell that knows a bunch of stuff that's irrelevant. So definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, and then don't build just for the sake of building. I know. This is basically, you want to build a bot. I know you do. That's the name of the presentation. But not everything needs to be an agent, right? And there's some factors that you need to consider before, like, making the decision of like whether you want to create an agent for whatever it is you're trying to solve. Like agent overhead, right? That, as Will and I were just talking about, testing and monitoring and maintenance, that is work. It's real work to be able to optimize your agent. So, do you have the team and the process to support that type of long term, pretty much that sort of process long term. Is there a simple solution alternative? Sometimes a simple Power Automate flow or a SharePoint page or a spreadsheet is the answer, or maybe even like a script or a rule or something like that. You should always try to evaluate if like you're not trying to kill ants with a sledgehammer. Like if it's something that is pretty simple and can just really be handled by something a lot more simple. Reliability and determinism, right? So, agents can be less predictable. They're definitely more prone to edge case failures. Excuse me. So, these critical systems sometimes can require deterministic logic, not probabilistic behavior. So if you need something that needs to kind of stay on script, and you don't want to give an agent access to even have a remote chance of doing something crazy, maybe it's better that you don't author the agent, right? Data quality and availability. We talked about how important knowledge was a couple slides back, right? Agents are constrained by the data they can access. Incomplete or outdated data usually leads directly to poor decisions, or giving it too much data, like giving it pretty much the whole internet to go through. You got to make sure that you have a data strategy in terms of like what types of knowledge you want to give it. And then lastly, governance and risk, right? These autonomous actions can increase compliance and audit concerns. Errors, they can propagate quickly through systems. So you need to make sure that you kind of have strong controls, approvals, and logging before any types of scaling. And not sure if you have anything else to add, Will, to these points.
I have one question for you, David. If you could go back to the beginning of your bot building career, what do you wish you knew earlier?
I think just how time intensive it was. Like I mentioned, I used to create bots through Power Virtual Agents, and that was it was simple, but honestly, it's much more fun to build agents this way now with the AI capabilities. because it really does feel like it's like a growing organism in some way of like, this thing is alive. It doesn't quite have like, I can't quite 100% predict what's going to happen, which is, a little scary, but I can at least like get to 99%, right? And ensure that the things that don't need to happen won't happen. So I think it's just for me like the levels of complexity and the sheer amount of cool things that you can do that will save you so much time if you really can nail it and get it right. Because initially I was a little skeptical, honestly, of like, this presentation would have been great for me, honestly, like coming into it before I had gone, because I was a bit skeptical about like how good it was and like whether, it's all like hype or not. And definitely some parts of it are, but some parts of it are not. Like if you really can master this and really like know the things that you need to know to build a good agent, it will make your life easier. It will make, whether it's an internal bot, right, like your employees' lives easier, or like your consumers or your customers' lives easier too, which will obviously impact your bottom line. So yeah, I know that was very long-winded, but basically it was just saying like, I wish I would have had this. I wish I would have had this entire presentation.
Yes, very well said. Very well said. I mean, I think if you're going to take away one thing from this, it's take this presentation and show it to everybody, because everybody could benefit from knowing how to build a bot. Because in reality, that's part of the paradigm that we're in now. Whether you're actually a developer by trade or not, that democratization of that capability has made this stuff accessible. I mean, even my grandfather, who's turning 90 this year, could theoretically create an agent. And so it is, a building block of the world that we're now all existing in. And so, take it with a grain of salt. Of course, you're not going to pull all this stuff off overnight, but really think about what that skill set means and what that relationship with AI is going to be for you, not just in the coming months, but over the remainder of your career, and into wherever things take you next.
Yep.
And that is what we had. We have some resources that we want to share. David, you want to talk a little bit about those?
Yes. You can check out our blog here. This is where we share insights across D365. We also have a knowledge hub. So that this has kind of like a basically like an educational resource hub of courses and articles that we put together, and events as well. And if you scan the QR code, you can also book a 30-minute consultation with our experts, who are all amazing. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining. Really looking forward to seeing what you do with this information.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Take care.